One more time, welcome to Cloud Data Driven. You are free, for example, to comment, but with respect, there must be no offense comment. Also keep video and microphone off, and then type your questions. I will respond to that. Also, if you can unmute unless if it's being asked. Our presentation today is how to identify database performance issue, and then Jane Joseph, which is me. And I have a couple presentation lined up. You are free, guys, to sign up for them. And I have, I think I'm booked all the way to March or April. If you guys want, for example, to present any session, feel free to do that. And I will post all the available speakers. You are free to submit your session at joseph@bigdatadriven.org, right? So let's get started, guys. Right, as you know, our this presentation is primarily for people who want to know exactly where to start and then how to identify database performance issue. 90 to 95% of people normally focus on indexes, right? Whereas they ignore everything else. And then when I start with the demo, and I will explain to you why index you should think of it last. By the way, I am Jean Joseph, currently located in United States, originally from Haiti. I've been working as a database administrator for about 10 years and convert to data engineering. Right, I'm very passionate when it comes to troubleshooting, database performance issue, performance tuning, and also designing and implementing big data pipeline. You guys, this is my blog. You are free to go and visit it, and also feel free to email me if you have any questions. Not only that, you can follow me on Twitter at Garia79, and then this is my LinkedIn page. Code, you guys can scan it and it will redirect you to my profile. Feel free to connect with me. And also, I'll be happy to get your feedback after these sessions. Right. As I said, identifying performance tuning issue is not something easy, and you need to have your own tweak or checklist in order for you to be on top of your environment, right? I'm gonna walk you through hardwares and system configuration, things that can help you improve your performance. So this
Gene,
way,
you just share your screen, Gene.
You're not able to see my screen? I'm sharing my screen. You're not seeing it?
I can't see it.
No.
I don't think any of us can.
Oh, sorry about that, guys. It's showing that I'm sharing it. Let me stop and do it one more time. Let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Yes, now I can see.
Yep. I can see it as well.
Yep, perfect. Just give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Okay, perfect. So, yep, this is what I'm gonna cover with you. I'm gonna cover give you some good counters that you guys can take a look, right, at the hardware level, and then some configuration setting. You guys should take a look, and then when we go to the demo, we're gonna cover all of this as well. So when it comes to troubleshooting, right, I have, based on my experience, anytime when there is slowness, people throw resources, like they go and add more CPU, right? Adding more CPU can make your system go fast. However, if you don't really pinpoint the root cause of the issue, you will end up to go back to the same way place you were. So more CPU does not solving any kind of performance issue. Just for your information, do not overcommit that. When it comes to memory, right? For example, there are some counter you should quickly take a look whenever something goes wrong. Instead of really go change your code, whereas this was running forever without any issue, instead of adding index that can even add more overhead to your OLTP database, right? Because the more you add index, the more space is required, and then the more read and write and update that required. So these are the things that you will need to understand, especially if your environment is a batch processing. Adding index can also impact performance, right? For memory, right, adding a lot of memory most of the time does not resolve any issue based on my experience. However, there are some counter that will allow you to understand if you have memory pressure, like available byte. Available byte is the available amount for use by the system. If that value is low, this is a good indication, tells you that you do have memory issue. There's another one that I really like, and especially if your environment have, for example, any third-party monitoring tools, I like to keep track on that one, which is PaySec. It's give what kind of information this one provides you. It gives you the number of pages that were retrieved from the disk due to the page fault. So that's when you see this information is very valuable, and it gives you the number of page written to disk to free space in the working set. So that's when a high value here can indicate a lack of memory, right? There is another one you should definitively pay attention, which is buffer cache hit ratio. So this one, it gives you the percentage of page found in the buffer cache without having to read it from disk. I normally have an alarm or alert set up. As soon as it drops down below 97, I need a warning alarm to let me know something is going on. However, anything below 95, you should be a sign of memory issue, right? So I just put it 90 as this is a presentation. I don't want to be too hard on this one, but it should be 100. The value you should accept for this buffer cache hit ratio should be at least 100. If it's 100, so that means you definitively do not have memory issue. And then, can everyone put themselves on mute? Right. There is storage. For storage, nowadays, 99 to 95% of the time, storage is the biggest bottleneck, right? You won't see CPU or memory most of the time unless if they are full TC core, right? But based on my experience when it comes to performance tuning and troubleshooting, storage is the biggest bottleneck. These two counters, performance counter are my favorite one. The first for physical disk object, the first one is average disk queue length. What this one tells you, it gives you the average number read and write that queue on the disk, right? Not only that, it gives you this number indicate the percentage. For example, it indicate the number. This number indicate the disk operation that are waiting. So that information is very valuable, and it's designed to let you know. For example, you may end up to have storage issue, especially if the value frequently exceed 2 during peak usage. So that could be a storage problem. There's another one which is average disk sec, read, and disk sec write. It shows you the average time of a disk read and write. If that value is under 10 milliseconds, so that's mean you do not have any storage issue. However, if the value is higher than 20 milliseconds, that indicates a storage issue as well, because it should not take that long to retrieve any data to read or write any data to the disk, right? So meaning this is for storage. However, there is a configuration at the server OS level where a lot of people ignore it. That can bring you a lot of performance as well. The reason why I start that way is that based on my experience, it's always the way people troubleshooting performance issue is a little bit different. They either reboot the server, right, and kill some process, and sometimes they end up to have more issue, to add more issue on top of the one they had before. So that's why I start this way. This has a lot of value. For example, right, the default one is power plant balance, right? It's very slow on Windows Server, that setting, right? You can improve performance if you have to, especially if you do not have any application depend on dynamic performance scaling, right? How can you do that? You can update the system. So if you do have application depend on dynamic performance scaling, you can update your BIOS to a current version and always make sure you are on the current version. You still have to refer to manufacturer for related to that specific model. And then you need also to apply hotfix for your operating system in order to have great performance. And then you have to apply CPU update. So that's mean you need to have close relationship with infrastructure team if you are on premises to understand if these are up to date, if your system set on the power plant balance. However, if you have a heavy OLTP where there is a lot of transactions, right, where it is it's too much, switch it back, change it to power plant. High performance can improve it, right? However, you need to know your environment if there is any application that depend on dynamic performance scaling. That may impact, because this will definitively disable dynamic performance scaling based on the environment. The way to enable it, you just go to power setting, and then you choose which one you want. You can change it back to however you want, and then you select high performance. For SQL Server configuration, after you install SQL Server configuration, you need to configure max memory, because by default SQL Server will grab all the memory. And when SQL Server grab that, it may not leave enough memory for the OS to breathe. So with that said, you may end up to have a lot of timeout, right? And then you're gonna think it is related to performance, whereas the SQL Server grab all the memory. So it's always best to configure it and leave 10 to 20% of free memory. For example, if I have 8 gigs, I would assign 6 gigs to SQL Server and leave 2 gigs to OS, right? And then there is also max degree parallelisms. A lot of people leave it to 0. That can have a big performance impact because the default is 0. What that means, if you have, for example, 32 vCPU, it will go and use all of them, and which you don't want to. It's always a best practice to set this value to the number of physical core in a single CPU, right? So that's mean you maintain that. But max degree parallelisms depend on cost threshold for parallelisms. So what I mean by cost threshold is what will tell SQL Server if you really need multiple thread to execute your query. So the default is 5. I would highly suggest you to increase it to either 25 or 50, depending on the workload. A lower value is better for OLTP, especially if it's a heavy OLTP. Leave it between 20 to 30 would be better instead of 5. But if this is OLAP or your data warehouse where there is a lot of read and write happening, increase it even to 50, you will see a tons of performance, right? Because this one maintain max degree parallelisms. So these are the things that you will need to think of when you're trying to troubleshoot database performance issue. There's other things during the installation and configuration. You should think also of instant file initialization. This feature allows SQL Server to bypass the stage of 0 out for new space. That can take a lot of time, especially if you do have your database set up using the default. So if you have 1 terabyte of free space, right? That 10%, even though Microsoft changed it now, will be at least 1 gig. So increase 1 gig, 100 gig may be too much. So that's mean once you get SQL Server service account to perform value maintenance plans, instead of when AutoGov kick in, instead of SQL Server Windows will 0 out for the space and allocate it to SQL Server. SQL Server will be able, the space will be able to allocate it without 0 out. So since SQL Server 2016 and 17, Microsoft prompt you to set up and configure by just checking the box to enable this feature. And then this is something you should think of. Right, there's 10 dB. 10 dB is that's a big topic, right? 10 dB is most of the time could be your biggest bottleneck, especially if you did not configure it the proper way, right? The best way to configure it is to move 10 dB into a separate storage from your other database. Because if, for example, that database that drive go out of space, first of all, there will be timeout, right? And then if you know ways to force SQL Server to shrink and release that space, that you are lucky. But if you don't, you may end up to reboot it and there will be data loss. So that's mean it's always best. And then you should have, for example, you should create multiple files, right? And I always go up to 8 depending on the number of core that I have. Also, if you are seeing high IO contention and page large weight, this is a good sign that tell you 10 GB is very busy, it's under pressure. So these are the things that you will need to understand when it comes to identifying and troubleshooting database performance issue. There's a couple database feature that auto create and auto update statistic. You should always leave it on, but sometimes depending on the size of the database, you may end up to shut it off, right, and then maintain it manually, because when auto update statistic or create kick in, depending on the size of the data, it may cause some performance impact. I would highly suggest to leave auto shrink, enable or disable. Do not enable it. You have to enable it carefully, right? And then for your database page verification, always leave it checksum. You will benefit a lot from checksum. First of all, if there is corruptions, SQL Server will send data to MSDB page corruptions, right? And then not only that, your backup will fail as well. So that's mean if there is corruptions, you will end up to see that, right? There's also the default database, the AutoGrowth. I always change it between 12 megabytes to 1 gig, right? And then these have to be applied for data and log files as well. For coding style, based on my experience, I'm seeing developers, they like to create T-SQL very complex, right? And then in order for you to troubleshoot that and understand it, you're gonna have to go to multiple line of codes, right? Making it simple, and then only select the required columns. One thing a lot of developer means is that they don't like to use pagination. As a DBA, if you are bringing more than 1,000 record to your front-end application, I would tell you to use pagination. So bring at least first 200, first 300. You don't want to bring more than that. Whereas I have seen developer that returning more than 30,000 records, and then when the application crash, the front end cannot handle the workload. They bring it back, create index, and do this and do that. Most of the time, which is not the root cause of this. Pagination is one of the nice feature that can help you bypass a lot of performance issue, right? So use that. From your ETL, bring your transactions smaller, report as well. Anything that require big transaction, just bring them smaller. That's the best way you can maintain your performance, your database performance. You can improve your database performance. And then these are, for example, some of the things also that can cause performance, especially if it's not outside of this hardware and setting, right? So if you're looking at blocking, parameter sniffing, statistic index, all of this can impact your performance, correct? So now, if while you're working, somebody call you, walk to your office, or email you and say, report are running slow, right? If report are running slow, so with all the knowledge, let's say you will maintain your environment, right? So now the report is running slow, and you know you have all the experience and knowledge how to troubleshoot this. The question is, where should we start, right? So if you guys want, feel free to unmute yourself and let me know, for example, where would you start if they tell you the report is running slow? Where would you start?
Well, I'm not sure where I'd start.
Yeah, just guess. As a DBA, where would you start?
Well, I'd run the proc first just to make sure it ran and see how long it took.
Okay,
And
what
maybe
happened?
run an execution plan with it.
Okay, what make you think of the execution plan?
Whether or not I have the right indexes or too many.
Okay, so what happened if that work completed very fast from your end? What would you do?
That's where I don't know, because I'm a rookie. So that's why I'm here.
Who else want to talk?
So
Where
you got
would
to
you
check,
start?
you got to check memory. You got to check disk. You've got to see if there's pressure from the memory, pressure from the disk. You've got to, before you even get into the code, you got to see if there's a server issue as opposed to a code issue. Because it may not even be your,
all of them are,
it might not even be your proc or your code. It may be that something else is affecting the server resources.
but even from the client side. Perfect. So are there anyone else that want to say something?
Well, I also check the activity monitor, but
Right. So what I realize is that the best way to troubleshoot your environment when it comes to performance issue is to have a checklist. You should always have a checklist. That checklist is the one that will help you work more proactive instead of reactive. Because when you work proactive, you already have a tons of scripts that you can use that can bring you a report. People who work with me knows that I wrote a PowerShell script that can go anytime when there is a P1 open. What I do is that I run that PowerShell script. All I need is give me the application, and I have a custom database. Once I type the application, it's gonna come and bring me all the servers with all the dependencies, go and run report. So what happened? Within my checklist, the first thing I'm gonna check is the blocking, because most of the time, even application developer does not understand how database work. They just start coding, right? So because if there is any blocking going on, so that's mean this is what business or user can say: the application is down, things is not working as expected. The first thing I'm gonna check is are there any blocking? If there are, I'm gonna check to see are there any open transaction, because open transaction is our performance killer. Somebody probably working, have a big strength, or any ETL process. Sometimes they're doing heavy work, they have a big trend, and then the data is too much. So guess what happened? It taking time. By the time that the report need that same set of data, that data is not available, they could tell you, for example, things is not working well, we have a performance issue. And then if you go and change your code, add an index, and then once you add it, thankfully, that's the time the process is completed. Guess what happened? That index and whatever change you made may be useless. And you may even add the bugs to your system, because whenever things happen, it's always best to ask questions, right? Email that person or call that person, set up a meeting, talk to that person, understanding exactly what that person is having, what they mean by application is not working as expected, the report is running slow, application is down, I'm able to access the application. What do you mean? You understand? Parameter sniffing also can cause that. If a process used to run, hello?
Gene, yeah, you say check for open transactions. what is your quick way of checking for open transactions? What do you do?
No, I'm gonna demo all these checklists if I have time. Do not worry. You know, when I'm doing my presentation, I like to take my time, right? And I like, for example, to interact with people, so this way I can learn from them and I can give them better recommendations. So don't worry, there will be a demo, right? So when we're looking at this, parameter sniffing can cause performance issue, right? So I'm gonna check that first because I have to make sure I did all I can in order for me to reach out to someone else, right? So if there is none of this is where, for example, I would think of seeing CPU, seeing IO, seeing memory to make sure that if everything is working as expected. So if all of them looks good, before I even think of open that work, what I'm gonna do is check SQL Server, check agent, check Windows event log, even check application URL log to find out if I can find something, right? And then if all of them is good, that's the time I'm gonna think of analyzing index and statistic, right? Because I don't wanna go and do anything that is not related specifically to that process, right? Instead, I wanna do a deep dive analysis where I know, for example, I am definitely right. I don't have database issue. You guys have to find out. If none of this, I cannot find anything, that's the time I'm gonna go and work with operation team, network team, application developer team, because if this is something outside of database, there's nothing I can do. All I can do is open a priority one, have everyone join, because it is not database issue. So these are my checklists. It may not be good for you, but it worked for me, and that it helped me solve a lot of issues and save times, that instead of spending 2-3 hours in a priority one where it is not related to database, all I do, run my script and then have, for example, all the report and attach it to that ticket and have them investigating. Because most of the time, I guarantee you, the way you think of the query plan, index, and statistic, right? It's not, most of the time, they're not really the root cause of the issue. So let's start to a demo, for example. Give me 1 second. Right. Are you able to see my screen? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. You see Management Studio, correct?
Correct.
Perfect. I'm going to show you one thing, just for your information. I'm going to create this if it's not exist. All I'm doing is, for example, inserting data and creating an index, right? Okay. Let's say, for example, somebody come and execute this, right? They execute this. Oh, you see how fast is this? So, okay, now let's say after a couple times, like years, months, days. So now somebody come and have an open transaction. That same person come back and query this. What would you do? So now add an index, update statistic will not solve your issue, right? Because right now there is open transactions. So there's absolutely nothing you can do. You either kill it, and if you kill it, you have to make sure you know your environment, because once you kill it, right? If you are on old SQL Server version, it will use only one CPU to do the rollback. So that means if you have 32 CPU, the process was running for 1 hour, you may end up to wait for 1 day to roll back, because it will use one CPU. These are the things, right? But with latest of SQL Server, but especially 2019, it will allow you to use multiple CPU to roll back. But sometimes, even though when you roll back, you may some people even restart their computer, but when you restart it, you make it worse because it's gonna go and do the recovery. You're gonna keep on watching the log, which is not good because there will be application downtime. So there's absolutely nothing you can do. So that person will come and tell you, I used to execute this under 1 millisecond. Now it's taking forever. What should I do? So the first thing I'm gonna check, like I said, I'm gonna check to see, are there any open transactions? No, blocking, sorry. So I'm seeing there is one blocking, right? So now I can see 64 is being blocked by 61. So the second thing I'm gonna do is check, for example, are there any open transactions? So if you're looking at this, it is in sleeping state. And I have seen some DBA, even developer, remove sleeping state status when they are looking for process, what is currently running, which is kind of one, because you're gonna miss every transaction that currently have open transaction but completed, but they're not either committed or rollback. As you can see, I love to look for this comment to make sure if I have anything pending, either to rollback or commit. And then as soon as I see there is an open transaction, I want to see how much resources this guy is being used, right? So I can, for this one, I can see the 64 is waiting on lock mode share. So that's mean you guys can see there is an open transaction, correct? I can see, for example, how long it's been waiting, and I can see the resource usage. And then depending on what you're doing, you may end up to see the work count, correct? But it is being blocked by 61. So I need to understand 61. But there's one thing I forgot, for example, to show you for, let me do it now. I forgot to mention it. So it was 64 and then 61. I like, for example, to understand which one comes first. This will be the same. It will be the same. I like to understand which one comes first, correct? So what this one tells me, right? I can see these sessions, right? Use a commit, and then this is the time. And then after that, 64 come and request that same set of data. So now I can quickly reach out to the user or the application owner and let them know, for example, send a screenshot of this, say, listen, you guys are running something that causes issue on production. Can you please let me know what to do? And I don't want to kill it because I don't know the process well, or if I know the process, there will be zero impact. Is it okay? But killing it, kill the session, I'm not a big fan of that, but depending on the process, it may resolve it, but sometimes it's always best, for example, to have a process that monitor how long can you guys hear me? How long a sessions being open? Always have a process to monitor how long you have any process that have open transaction. Because if you have any process that require more than like 60-second open transaction, right, that begin trend before it's coming, you will need to understand why, and then what can we do to bring that down, because 60 seconds it's too much, right? But if you depending on the environment, if you are okay, you can even set it up to 5 minutes and trigger an alert, because these are the things that can quickly create some issue within your environment, to your environment. So now I can even go a little bit deeper. What I mean by, I can narrow it down to understand more information, but I don't have time and I have to go to question and then do more demo. So, and guess what happened? If I come in this one, right? So I don't want to go to all of this because I see the time. If I come in this one now, I say comment, okay? So now the data return, and if I kill it or commit it, the data return. So what I mean by all your input was amazing, right? We have to take a look at the resources, which is the right way, and then we have to look at the query plan. But most of the time, looking at the query plan should be your really last steps, because you need to understand, is it a processes issue, like I just said, or is it a hardware or resources issue, or is it a database issue? So you need to understand that before you go and do any change code or adding index or modify your environment. For example, for statistic, I want to show you something for statistic. One of the best way you can save your time to understand if the issue is related to statistic. Perfect. So let me go and demo this. Let me close this one. For statistic, right? So give me 1 second. Let me jot this and create this, insert that data. Yep. Perfect. When you create a table, by default, there is absolutely no statistic created, even though if you have auto statistic enabled. For example, let me prove it to you. So as you can see, there is absolutely no statistic. If I make a select to London, right, and I query the same one, you will see that I do have statistic. Perfect. But how I see people analyze statistic, they always miss some information, and I'm gonna prove this to you. If I wanna check, for example, some statistic information and even looking at the histogram, right? And then if I make a count of everything, everything should match, right? For example, if you're looking at here, I have one row, one rows, right? Let me show you this. I have one row, one rows. And then if I look at this one, it is the same. I have 29, 29, right? And I have 29, 20, 29. So whatever you do, you will see it the same. And then this is exactly how many records I just inserted, right? So that's exactly how many records. If you're looking at the raw, the sample, and then also the filter, everything match. But here's the thing. I'm gonna create one index, so this way you guys can see. Let me bring this down. Okay. I'm gonna looking at the index, and also for time being, I'm gonna select all three together. If you're looking at everything match, guys, correct? And you're looking at this one as well, everything match. So what happened when you create index, it will automatically create statistic. And when you do any selection on a field, if that field does not have statistic and auto created statistic is on, it will create it for you. So guess what happened? I'm about to insert 832 records. If I go and do the same thing again, right? What I want you to understand, I insert 832 records. The original record that I inserted is this, guys. So it still remains the same, nothing changed. So that's mean if you are troubleshooting statistic, you're relying on show statistic, you won't be able to get what you need. However, because we know what will change, we can check to see, we can check, for example, go and play with it and see if SQL Server realized there were, for example, data being updated. If you're looking at here, it's still saying 434, whereas we have 838. So that's mean if you're relying on this one, you will end up to have one statistic, right? However, if you select this one, check what will happen. You will see you still have the same from statistic. However, you have a modification counters. That modification tells you how many records that being modified. So that means statistic is not up to date. So this is exactly the number of the record we just inserted. So that means statistic is not up to date. Even, for example, just to make it a little bit fun, let me do this, right? If I select all three together, right, you will see, for example, this one will match all of this because this data is coming from these guys, right, as you can see. However, we think that DMVs, DB staff properties, Microsoft giving you a way to see if your statistic is updated or not. So if I go and update statistic, right, and I go and make a selection, guess what happened? So now there is 0 modification. Your statistic is up to date. So knowing where to look when it comes to database performance issue is allowed. And then you have to understand, take your time is better than rushing, and understand exactly where to go and have a checklist. Without that checklist, it would be very hard for you most of the time to come up with a way to show people it is not database or it is database, is what we have to do to resolve it. So that's why, for example, I like to go with analyzing statistic last and index. Let me show you one thing. And I have seen, for example, I hope I add this because I see the time. There's another thing that I like to show you. There's another thing I really like to show you. For example, let me quickly do this. Let me close this one. So if you have, when things happen, and then you know it is not resources, it is not SQL Server, it is business process issue where you have to go and modify your stock procedure. Sometimes, hey guys, we all know that you may end up to open a stock procedure that have more than like 10,000 line of codes. How can you quickly understand what is going on? This demo, I really love it because anytime when things happen on my environment, that's normally what I do. So guess what happened, guys? I'm gonna create a stock procedure. I have update, I have insert, I have select all. Just watch what will happen. So now I have my stock procedure. Okay, perfect. If business or application or developer share with me the stock procedure, what I normally do, I'm gonna pass the stock procedure here, and I can quickly have a good sense to understand if that stock, what they're doing inside that store procedure, right? Do they have select all? Yes, they do. Do they have update? Yes, they do. Do they have insert? Yes, they do. And then if you're looking at the store procedure, it tells you exactly, I have insert, I have select all, and I have update. So meaning it's easy for you to understand instead of you quickly go and search for updates, search for insert, search for select. But this tells you exactly, give you a good sense. You may not, and then not only that, for example, you may not be aware exactly the real logic behind it, but at least you have a good sense, right? And I have a tons of questions, but I want to leave the last 6 to 5 minutes for questions. And I have other demos. Let's leave the other time for questions. If you guys have any question, can you please unmute yourself and ask?
Yeah, can we see that code that you just ran to get that is selected all?
Yes, this is the code. I will share that with the group as well. I'm gonna pull it to my GitHub, so this way you can download it. Any other questions?
Yeah, I would just like to be able to get the code that you've been running, the actual examples here. If we can get those when you download, great.
Yes, I will share them with the group. I will upload them to my GitHub, and then and I will communicate it to the user group. Any other questions?
No, I personally just need to absorb it.
Why?
Oh, because
you are free to ask any question.
I am a business analyst that's been put into the DBA role, so I'm still a rookie, but I'm the most advanced person in my company. I have written a one stored procedure that is 1,500 lines long and pulls in multiple other ones. So God knows I have no clue what I'm really doing. So that's why I need to absorb it all.
Okay, that's fine.
I'm the blind leading the blind at my company.
That's fine.
But yeah, and we do have serious performance issues in our industry, and we just added more memory, significantly more memory. So, and it didn't help.
Adding more memory will not really solve the issue. Like I said, you need to have a checklist. Yes, and understand, for example, your environment. Your environment, is it batch processing or transactional?
It's more, I deal with more transactional. My big procs I try and keep as a batch in the middle of the night when less users. But I mean, our system comes down, transactional slows down in the middle of the day to a dead crawl. We don't know why.
Okay, perfect. But when you say transactional, do you do report and OLTP point to the same database?
I'm not quite sure what the question is.
So meaning, do you have your you said you're part of BI team, happen to be DBA, right?
Not say that one more time.
Okay, let me ask you this question. Do you have do your report and your application point to the same single database?
Yes.
So you will definitively find performance issue because doing the report, you will need to replicate your production data to a different environment. And then use that as a for reporting purposes, because doing business hours, you don't want your while people running report and to create issue on top of your production database. I would highly suggest you to replicate that.
Okay. Because I mean, our database is 100 gig, but at least, and I don't know if is 100 gig database a big database or a small database in reality.
To be honest with you, everything depends on how you create your processes, right? So if you think, like I said, doing your, when you, I would say 100 gig is compared to database size is, for example, small database, but you're gonna have to think of the application front end resources, how much that application can handle. You understand?
I think
And
so.
then there's a lot of tools out there have limitation when it comes to the data volume. You will need to understand those as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I also don't want to dumb down this conversation, so sorry, guys.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Any more questions? Then if there's no more questions, I think I'm gonna leave it there. You guys feel free to, for example, give feedback of the session, and if you have any specific topic you guys want to talk about, just let me know. If you guys want to present any session, just let me know. And then also I have a tons of other session lined up for you guys. Just let's keep in touch. Thank you so much for your time. I hope to see you very soon on 21, right? January 2021. I have Amendo. He's one of the best speaker out there. He's a senior specialist architect and MVP. And he speak. All my speakers, for example, speak on all kind of conference. They are all competent. They know what they're doing. Don't forget to join them, and then have a good one. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And John, how do we get to your GitHub again?
I will share that link with you.
Okay.